Today I'm going to review another Doctor Who story, and this one's called Survival.
Why, Doctor? What an unexpected pleasure.
Doctor Who Survival was broadcast in 1989 and is a three-parter. It was the final story from season 26. It's also the final story of the classic show. However, the BBC did make a story after this called Ghostlight, but that was broadcast before this story. Sylvester McCoy plays the Doctor and would return in 1996 for the TV movie, where he regenerates into Paul McGann. It's the final story to feature Ace, and also the final story to feature the Master, played by Anthony Ainley. He played the character 11 times, and he also played the Master for a PC game. Survival was directed by Alan Wareing, written by Rona Munro, who didn't like the design of the cheetah people. Script editor was Andrew Cartmel, producer was John Nathan Turner, and music by Dominic Glynn. With this story being the final in the classic show, Andrew Cartmel wrote the closing dialogue, where the Doctor gives a monologue to Ace. This would be the final scene in the classic show. Hale and Pierce make a cameo in this story. Lisa Bowerman, who plays Karra, would go on to voice Bernice Summerfield for Big Finish Productions. Survival stars Sylvester McCoy as the 7th Doctor, Sophie Aldred as Ace, and Anthony Ainley as the Master. So this is the last story that the classic show made, although it did return with the TV movie and then the new version of Doctor Who in 2005. So in this story we see the return of the Master, played by Anthony Ainley again, after a 3-year gap, and he teams up with these creatures, the cheetah people, and they're capturing these people from Earth and taking them to the planet. So most of the story is set on Earth, where Ace lives. So the story does have some faults. I think the cheetah people design looks awful. Even the writer for this story was disappointed with the design of the cheetah people. Hell, them cheetah people look soft as bloody shit. I could have made the buggers better myself. Another thing that's bad about this story is most of it's set during the day, bright daylight, and I think that's a bad directional choice. If I was doing this story, I'd want it like a bit darker and moodier. But it's bright daylight and there's no atmosphere to it. Could have at least waited till it was a bit dusky. It also has some bad visual effects. I hate the pink background of the alien planet. It looks terrible. It is good to see Anthony Ainley play the Master again. And in this one, he's a bit more reserved. And it's a much more toned down performance, and it's better. He's better when he's not really over the top. So it's a bit more like his earlier performances, like in Logopolis, which I still think he's best. Another thing I really liked about this story was Sophie Aldred, who plays Ace. Her performance was great, and she reminds us a lot of Rose. Sort of like a prototype of Rose. A trendy street girl, streetwise. So her character must have influenced Russell T Davies when he was writing the character of Rose.
I felt like I could run forever. Like I could smell the wind and feel the grass under my feet and just run forever.
However, I still think Sylvester McCoy, who plays the Doctor, I still think he's irritating.
If we fight like animals, we'll die like animals!
Although he's not as bad as his performances in season 24, so he does get better as his era goes on. And there are some stories where he's really good, like Ghostlight or Remembrance of the Daleks or Great Show in the Galaxy. They're good performances. But this one happens to be one of his worst. He's just a bit too silly, and he does visual comedy a lot. Whereas Tom Baker, it was more funny lines of dialogue and the way he says them. Whereas Sylvester McCoy, it's all juggling and doing silly bits, climbing over walls, and it's just not funny. He can be serious when he wants to be, but he hasn't been given many scenes like that. I think Sylvester McCoy and also Colin Baker, they seem to stand out better in the Big Finish productions, the audio productions that they did. But on TV, the eras aren't very good compared to the other Doctors. Also in this story, You say Hale and Pierce. They were famous during this time, a comedy act on television. And it's another example of John Nathan Turner giving weird cameo appearances to stars who aren't really suitable for this sort of thing. Say, for instance, Ken Dodd's in one. Although I thought Hale and Pierce weren't too bad in this. They were quite funny.
Well, if you believe the advertisers, this is the one preferred by your cat connoisseur.
There's also a funny character in this. There's a PE instructor. He's a sergeant. He's always going on about survival and survival of the fittest.
I mean, I'm teaching you the art of survival. I'm teaching you to fight back. What happens when life starts pushing you around, son, eh?
And he ends up dead at the end. Another thing about this story, with it being a three-parter, it's a good length. Like, three-parters go over fast. But for some reason, this story just ends. It's like a big flash. And it's like a reset, everything's back to normal. You don't find out what happens to the master or anything. And it's just a naff ending.
If we fight like animals, we die like animals!
Hey, hell, I thought the bugger was a bloody four-parter. The bugger just ended in a flash. What the hell happened to the last episode, Phil? It's almost like it should have been a four-parter, but they chopped the last episode off. I really hate stories that don't have a very satisfying ending, and this is a great example of one. So, although the story's, it's okay, I've seen a lot worse, it is a poor story to end the classic era on. I can't understand why you didn't end the show on Ghostlight. That was made last, but it was screened before this one, and it's a much stronger story. So the classic show should have ended with Ghostlight. It would have made a bigger impact. However, it ended on this, like, fairly poor story. Why the hell didn't John Nathan Turner end the bloody show with Ghostlight? It was the last bugger made. Instead of ending it with this bloody shite. John Nathan Turner got Andrew Cartmel to write an ending monologue where Sylvester's talking to Ace. And that's in case the show didn't come back. And he was right, it didn't come back. So, really disappointing story to end the classic show on. However, it does come back in 1996 for the TV movie, and then again in 2005 when Russell T Davies takes over. But this is officially the end of the classic era of Doctor Who. And I think final stories are important. To end a TV show, you should have a final good story. So Doctor Who, it ended on survival, which I thought was poor. Star Trek ended with Turnabout Intruder, which is okay, but a bit disappointing. However, that show continued with movies. I enjoy all the movies, and like the final movies, The Undiscovered Country for the original cast, and that's a real high, ended on a high. And of course William Shatner was in Star Trek Generations as well, and that's really good as well, I enjoy that. So Star Trek kind of ended on a high, if you count the movies. I think my top 3 TV shows for final episodes are, in third place, I put Sapphire and Steel. That's because the final story ended with Sapphire and Steel trapped in this cafe for all time. Really weird ending, that. In second place, I'd put The Prisoner, episode Fallout. That's a controversial episode, but I think it's excellent. There's a lot in that episode that you can read into it. I thought it was an excellent way to end the show. And in first place, the best ending for a TV show ever, I would put Blake 7, episode Blake. And that's because the whole cast die. They get slaughtered. So they all die, and the more heroic for it. Brilliant way to end that show. So overall, I think Doctor Who's my favourite show, but the final story's disappointing. But at least the Master was in it, so that was kind of good. So out of 10, I think I'd only give this one a 6. Aww. 6 out of 10. Disappointing. Did you think, Bones, did you like it? I thought the bugger was a load of bloody cat shit. Another interesting thing is Sylvester McCoy, Sophie Aldred and Anthony Ainley all share the same birthday. And my next Doctor Who review will be the TV movie, so look out for that one. Okay everybody, bye, see you next time, like, subscribe and share. Bye, bye.
Somewhere there's danger. Somewhere there's injustice. And somewhere else the tea's getting cold. Come on, Ace. We've got work to do.